is 7-Eleven. The company is known for Slurpees and hot dogs.
It's just not as appealing. My perception is people go in there when they need to.
But now, it's working to bring more Japanese inspiration to its American stores.
Japanese inspiration, huh? You know, one thing's for sure, convenience stores have a massive problem right now, especially those in New York, which is why many of them are shutting down. And it's that they just aren't making enough money. But on the other side of the world, at 7-Eleven in Japan, things are totally different. And that's why our 7-Elevens are about to become more Japanese.
You're not going to believe the choice of food in a convenience store.
Rice balls.
Look at that. Michelin type of ramen.
This is 7-Eleven in Japan.
7-Eleven is now owned by a Japanese company, 7&I Holdings.
How the brand's grown for nearly 100 years. Starts with what's the customer want? Where do we think they're going? And how do we meet them where they're going?
From the beginning, the Japanese owners said American 7-Eleven had a lot of catching up to do.
The Japanese model was a lot more data-driven. They would pore over what sold well at what time of day, break it down by gender and age.
American 7-Eleven also has a big food and beverage business, but next year, it hopes to make 1/3 of its sales from store brand goods, including food.
Shoppers see it as a quick fill destination where they're not standing in line to pick up your milk, your eggs, your bread, your cheese, your quick fill-ins.
A big question is whether American customers will match the enthusiasm 7-Eleven sees in some of its other markets.
The American 7-Elevens we're all used to are now becoming Japanese. But even though I've been to Japan multiple times and have existed off the shockingly healthy offerings at their 7-Elevens, what nobody's talking about is that if you change around the stuff you sell in a store like this, you might not have any customers left in the country it's in. And that could be a huge risk for convenience stores like 7-Eleven, especially in New York, where to most people walking by, the image of the store's orange, red, and green logo reminds you of 2 for $5 Monster energy drinks, hot dogs spinning on rollers, and flavors of candy and chips that were invented yesterday. And if you're a fan of those big gulps, don't worry, they're not going away at all. They still sell like hotcakes, but the other items our twisted minds used to buy in here aren't bringing us into the stores as often as they used to. Which brings us to the real reason 7-Eleven plans on a massive shift concerning what they sell and who they're trying to sell it to. Because sadly, the money just isn't rolling into convenience stores like it once was. Which is why so many local stores are faced with challenges, shutting down, or why a lot of bodegas now sell things that are illegal and will get you thrown in jail if you buy it. But that's not an option for 7-Eleven. Because obviously selling something illegal is not going to work for a worldwide chain like this, which is why they better do something fast, and what they're going to do is become more Japanese. So what you just saw there, that's footage from inside a Japanese 7-Eleven, and you're probably wondering why those stores look totally different than the US stores. Well, the simple answer to that is because for the longest time, convenience stores in America could get by on 2 classes of items, only one of which is sold in the New York City stores, and times are changing, which is why the stores themselves now have to change along with them.
Convenience stores have historically made their money selling tobacco and gas. But now, as cigarette sales continue to decline, and many expect gas sales to slow, many are racing to find other sources of revenue and doubling down on food.
So, obviously, gas sales at this 7-Eleven in New York, 0, because everyone's walking. And that means that the 2 moneymakers, or the 1 moneymaker in the case of our New York 7-Elevens, which would be tobacco products everyone knows are bad for you, just isn't making as much money this year as it was last year. Which is obviously a huge problem because if these stores aren't making enough money, they're going to shut down. Plus, convenience stores already face a tough market here in New York. They've got insanely high rents because of where they're located, super high utility costs, and there's high taxes, which all means they've got to sell a ton of prime to stay in business. But if items like that, dollar coffees, big gulps, discount Monster energy drinks, if that's what people are buying, it might not be possible. But apparently this is a problem that's existed ever since 7-Eleven started off as an American company, went bankrupt, and then ended up being bought by a Japanese company.
From the beginning, the Japanese owner said American 7-Eleven had a lot of catching up to do.
The Japanese model was a lot more data-driven. The American system just wasn't as sophisticated as that.
The US stores were typically larger and attached attached to gas stations. The Japanese stores didn't sell gas, but had a much wider array of fresh food.
So I can confirm, the stores in Japan, a lot of them don't have gas stations, just like here in New York, which means they don't try to make money off people coming in to fill up their car. Because believe it or not, over there, people will go to 7-Eleven just because it's a 7-Eleven. Have you ever been inside one? Look at all these salads. It's like actually healthy and good for you. Every kind of instant noodle, frozen TV dinners, and a cinnamon roll. The bottled coffees are pretty affordable. That's like $1.50 right there, and they taste pretty good. And the Monster energy drinks are smaller than the Red Bulls. That's only gonna happen here. And I think this is a low-calorie sport drink. Yeah, you're not gonna find any of that in here yet. In fact, if you look at the 7-Eleven advertisements here, you'll see that people are mainly just coming in for the snacks, which are perfectly in line with tobacco products and other things that aren't good for you that normally are bought at U.S. convenience stores. But as customer tastes are changing, many of these bodegas, 7-Elevens, they're finding it tough to make enough money to stay open. But the problem for the local bodegas is they can't change around their business model like 7-Eleven's gonna try to do. Which is why a lot of these places are now turning into pseudo drug dealing operations. And what 7-Eleven's competitors are trying to do is find another product that's addictive, that people want to buy all the time. They think to themselves, oh, I want this, and then go buy it. But the problem is that's getting a lot of these places closed down because it's wrong. But it just goes to show you that the convenience store business in this country, it has always been about selling you things that are not particularly in your best interest to consume. But instead of these stores going the illegal route like their local competitors are doing, which isn't working out too well, they're gonna do things the Japanese way. But is this gonna work?
One of the most interesting lessons that we've learned from 7-Eleven Japan is their approach to operations.
This is especially important when it comes to food. 7-Eleven Japan is known for its wide array of meal options. American 7-Eleven also has a big food and beverage business, but next year, it hopes to make 1/3 of its sales from store brand goods, including food, up from less than 1/4 in
food, the last frontier of addiction. It's so addictive, we'll all die if we don't get enough of it. Now, already a lot of food is being sold at 7-Eleven, but the company realizes that a one-size-fits-all menu approach isn't gonna work for the entire country. Different stores in different neighborhoods, they're gonna need a different product mix to be most effective and to make the most money, and now the chain or the brand wants to help each of their little stores do that. And these new plans should also help them up the quality of their food offerings, and that was the one thing that shocked me about 7-Eleven in Japan, was just how good the food was, because to be honest, I found myself choosing that over places like McDonald's when I needed something quick to eat on a regular basis. Not only did I know that I would save time because the food's all ready to go, but the menu options were actually healthier. Plus the beverage selection is way better. And unfortunately, just like their US stores, there was even enough Japanese junk food in there for that mandatory sugar high. But the weird thing about this is, I don't know if people are gonna wanna eat the same stuff that I was eating in Japan here in America on a regular basis. I think that if people went into a 7-Eleven and they saw a whole new menu with a whole bunch of maybe rice-based products or things that they just weren't used to, they would walk in and then walk out, which makes it look like becoming Japanese might be a bad idea. So, just came out of this store right here. It looks like it's getting hit really hard by theft because they got little locks on pretty much everything, even the donuts. That's pretty crazy. But what it looks like 7-Eleven is gonna try to do to change things up is they're gonna have the brand function in the United States exactly like it does in Japan, from the way that the food is prepared, to how they figure out what people want at the various stores, and to how they also micromanage what the menu offerings are at those stores.
7-Eleven currently has 17 so-called commissaries around the country that make food for all of its U.S. locations. Now, it's partnering with Warabeya, a supplier for 7-Eleven Japan. Warabeya's new factories in Hawaii, Texas, and Virginia can make a wider and more localized range of food than 7-Eleven has been able to stock in the past.
And what this probably doesn't mean is that we're all gonna be eating rice. It probably doesn't mean that. I like rice, but if you don't, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Now, of course, we're probably gonna see some rice products, some noodle products, but it's probably not gonna replace every single thing on the shelves because this transition is gonna take time. But even though it's a shame that maybe the best snacks in Japan won't be coming to a 7-Eleven near us anytime soon, there's actually a lot of potential here for the company because they've got such low prices that if they can make make things better, healthier, or just with more variety and higher quality options in general, it's gonna save us all a ton of money. When you consider that your nearest fast food option like a McDonald's is always gonna be way more expensive, especially with Big Macs getting up near the $20 range for a meal. And the reason this is such a big opportunity is because New York is America's most expensive city. The rents are insane, the grocery prices are insane, and anything that a store like 7-Eleven could do if they can get it right, it's really gonna give them an advantage over pretty much any other option to eat. And even grocery stores, you go to Whole Foods, the milk is like approaching $8 right now. But when you consider that a lot of people who work in the city don't bring a lunch and end up eating at least 1 or 2 meals outside of the home every single day, that really adds up, and a low-cost option is probably gonna have a big impact on people's wallets. But even though these sound like exciting changes, they're gonna take a while, and in the meantime, the brand risks alienating its core customer who walks by and thinks Monster energy drinks and candy bars like I do. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but if the chain does one thing now very well, and that's what they're known for, and then they change, there might be a period of time where people adjust and they continue to lose money after spending money.
It's adding a lot of items to its menu. The main question is how many customers will buy them. And this is where data comes into the question. And it plans to use its massive data operation to do it. They collect demographic information.
So it seems like the chain thinks it can both become more Japanese and not lose any money because they're gonna use a fancy computer system to read our minds and predict what we wanna spend money on. And they're gonna take all that data from our buying habits and target us with ads throughout the day in their stores with computer monitors, which at the end of the day is something everybody in the fast food business is already doing. Like if you go to a McDonald's, they got screens everywhere, they got their app. You are being blasted with targeted advertisements and promotions so that they can see what you do. And it looks like this is part of the plan that 7-Eleven has to stay ahead of the customer. Not a plan that's revolutionary by any means in modern America, but when you apply it at the local level to convenience stores, it could really help them put the right things in the store to make sure that they get sales. Because people just aren't as freewheeling with their money now as they used to be. Things are tougher in this country, and especially in this expensive place to live. But this is gonna be a tough fight because all this restructuring is gonna cost a massive amount of money, and the customer at 7-Eleven now, especially here, they aren't going there for prepared local food options that aren't pizza, that aren't hot dogs. And the real concern here is that the core customer sees this restructuring and starts walking out of the store without buying the stuff that they were buying on a regular basis. Their coffees, their donuts, whatever else it is that they happen to buy. If they stop seeing that stuff on the menu or on the shelf, they're not gonna go in anymore. But the other problem the brand might have has to do with the size of the stores they're renting out. Look at how small these places are. Everything in this city is a dinky little storefront. There's just not a lot of space to rearrange all of the shelves and bring in a whole new slew of items. But even though it remains to be seen exactly how they're gonna go about trying to save their stores, what products we're now going to see, hopefully they're better, we don't know yet. They're telling us they are. 7-Eleven has one other advantage over pretty much every other convenience store in the entire city, in the entire country, and that they think is also gonna save them from having to do what maybe these smoke shop type places have to do.
And for potential customers who aren't at the store, there's delivery, the fastest growing part of the company's business. It's highly profitable for the company since delivery orders tend to be for about double the amount of in-store purchases.
How the brand's
Yeah, lots of demand for delivery bikes. Those are delivery bikes right there. These are delivery bikes. They're all over the place. It's popular, but it's also expensive. Unless, of course, the company that you're buying the food from is the company that does the delivery. And 7-Eleven has their own delivery. And now I've always figured that if you were getting delivery from 7-Eleven, you probably shouldn't go. But with their new menu options, that might change in the near future. But the one problem delivery companies are having in New York right now is a new minimum wage law was just passed for delivery workers. And of course, those companies have just passed those costs right along to consumers who are now paying higher prices. But 7-Eleven can compete around that because they make their money off the product, not just the delivery service, which means they can keep their delivery fees relatively low compared to competitors. And 7-Eleven's deliveries, they don't apply to everything in the store, just certain items. There's quite a few of them. But part of the way they make money is selling you things that have the highest profit margins possible, and it's likely that those are the items you're able to get. On top of that, the brand has also mentioned that part of their restructuring is going to be the introduction of more products and things that they make themselves. Take, for example, the 7-Eleven Gatorade competitors. It's bigger than a Gatorade, it's cheaper than a Gatorade, it's got all the same ingredients, but since it's 7-Eleven brand, Gatorade doesn't take a cut of that profit. It all goes to 7-Eleven. the food offerings like that, this is another opportunity for them to make a ton of money. But it's also not a new concept either. Amazon does this. If you've bought an Amazon Basics foam roller for your back or Amazon Basics charger for your iPhone, you know what I'm talking about. Costco is probably the biggest culprit. They do the exact same thing with their Kirkland branded items, which kind of makes it clear that a struggling local bodega can't do any of what 7-Eleven's doing because they don't make their own stuff. Everything they get comes from a distributor. Everything they get, a cut of that profit has to go to somebody else, not them. Now, when I first heard this story about 7-Elevens becoming more Japanese, that just blew my mind because I've been to the Japanese 7-Elevens and I know that the products there are completely different. And at first I thought that that's what we were going to be seeing on our shelves here in America. But now that I've researched this, what it really looks like they're gonna do is just transition how they go about making things, who they go about making things for, and how they know what to go and put in each store. If they start doing that the same way that they do in Japan, we'll start to see a lot of different stuff. You know, for example, if you go somewhere in the Midwest, that 7-Eleven might be stocked differently than one that's, say, in Koreatown in New York City, where the customer demand is a lot different. But the real question is, would people be willing to go to a 7-Eleven who aren't going already? For example, when I was in Japan, I went to a 7-Eleven and somebody had to tell me, my wife, that, hey, this is actually pretty good food. It's a lot different than what you're used to in America. I didn't know that. And if you don't know that, are you really gonna go there instead of a Whole Foods for some local, cheap prepared option that comes in a container somewhere? How much market education do they have to do? That's the biggest challenge in a business. You never, ever wanna have to make something and then teach people why they need it. They have to already know that they need it and you've gotta go make it. Is that what's happening here? Is 7-Eleven gonna succeed? Do you wanna eat Japanese 7-Eleven food? Let me know. I'll see you in the next video.